the usual way to indicate they wish to speak and use the microphones when speaking for the benefit of all present. Members are reminded that we will be using audio-visual system this afternoon and that the meeting will also be streamed live on YouTube. Please put mobile phones to silent, which I haven't done. I'll do that in a second. I will now provide a reminder of the evacuation procedure. In the event of having to evacuate the council chamber, please leave by one of the 6 emergency exits around the sides of the chamber. Please assemble at the far side of the car park, front car park nearest to the play park entrance. Officers will be on hand to assist persons who require any assistance. This is a public meeting and there is legislation that allows the public to film, record or use social media at a council meeting. Thus, this must not be disruptive to the good order of the meeting, nor include any filming or recording of the public seating area. I'm just going to turn my phone off before anything happens. Press the buttons. Why don't they? Oh, yeah. That's that done. Right. Okay. Item 1, apologies for absence. There are none. Item 2, minutes. Any comments on the minutes? Are we happy that they are a correct record? Please show. Please show. We're happy. Okay. Thank you. Good. Are there any declarations of interest? Apart from the fact that we all pay council tax, I suppose. I hope you pay, otherwise you can't attend tomorrow night. Okay. Item 4. Now, just going to do something a little bit differently. And I have discussed it with the Chairman of Scrutiny, who I welcome, Councillor Brown. I'm going to move the 4 bullet points under item 4 on block to note and to thank Scrutiny. And then we're going to take each of the Scrutiny bullet point items with the agenda item subsequently. But before that, before Councillor Cox reminds me, we're going to do that item 6 first, which is the asset management plan for corporate assets. So I'll ask it's Sarah and then Pranali, or Pranali and Sarah, whichever way you want to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. I'm happy to present the proposed asset management plan to Cabinet for approval. This is a key piece of work. This is a key piece of work that brings together all aspects of managing our buildings and assets. For the first time in a long time, we're going to be able to bring together a strategic overview of assets in this kind of comprehensive way. There has been a lot of work on this, and I want to thank the representatives from Cross Party who attended the working group and gave input and direction into some of this work. It gives us an overarching framework with a detailed action plan underneath. It will be reviewed on an annual basis. The one major element of the asset plan management plan is the plan maintenance programme, and that will dovetail into some of the budget reports that appear later, and supported by condition surveys, which has been a huge amount of work to establish the condition of all of our assets. The risk assessment-based approach to the allocation of resources for the coming year will not suit all, because we've had to highlight those which are the highest risk in terms of maintenance and the funding that we have available to us. We anticipate that by having this maintenance programme now based on the condition surveys and the risk management approach, we should be able to reduce the reactive repairs that we do over the coming years, which hopefully will in turn reduce the costs of those repairs. Cabinet, we will keep an eye on the budgets and the risks throughout the coming year, as will the asset management group, who will have working group, who will have an input on that. In summary, this is a final piece of work in putting the house in order in terms of our assets, and it will help regularise the procedures and support the development of the business cases for future projects. Lastly, you will see in some of the later reports around the digital asset management module that is part of our purchasing this year, and that will link the asset management to the finance system in a similar way to the HRA links to the finance system, which will allow for better income and maintenance monitoring. Okay, thank you.
Compulsory.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to highlight the few key objectives of the asset management plan. Basically, it includes regulatory compliance, all the health and safety work for our buildings, enabling service delivery, because all our buildings enable all other services in the council to function efficiently. The financial sustainability is a key aspect of this plan. It provides value for money. Also looks at leverage of investment, both from private and public sector partners. Also, it supports the economic growth, using our assets and buildings as a key tool to support economic growth within the town as well as the larger borough. But more importantly, the last point is about energy efficiency. It contributes quite significantly towards our climate change strategy. So it's in kind of an all-encompassing strategy, and completely support what Councillor Cox mentioned about the key risks we are managing through this project. So yeah, fair amount of detailed action plan to deliver over the next 5 years, but it all starts now. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Unless there are any questions or comments, I suggest we move these on block. Sarah, would you like to do that? And I'll second.
Yeah, I'm happy to propose the recommendations.
And they'll be referred to council tomorrow. Can you, all those in favour, please show? None against, so that's passed. Thank you. So we now go back to item 5, and I'll invite Councillor Brown to present his comments on the first bullet point on item 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I was just scrolling back to my highlighted version. Because of the way we're doing this, I'll just make one overarching comment, which was going to be my introduction to the item as originally set out, which was it's just reflecting what a number of members said at the scrutiny committee. And I say this slightly tongue-in-cheek because I'm sure you're very used as Cabinet to having enormous bundles of papers presented to you, but there was a view expressed that the amount of information and the amount of detail in the reports we had, because we were dealing with both the corporate strategy and the budget at the same meeting, was some people had found quite challenging. I have to say that there were comments made by some of the officers in attendance, which I tended to agree with, that we have had the benefit of a budget workshop in scrutiny, and of course we had the State of Melton debates, and there have been opportunities to be part of the process, you know, of contributing towards the reports that eventually were presented to us. Having said that, and it's just a reflection for looking forward, is how members can be better involved in these processes. Of course, when you're writing a 200-page report as an officer, and I've had some experience of presenting large reports to bamboozle the recipients myself in my working life, you're living and breathing in all the detail, because it's like building a Lego model, isn't it? You're constructing it all, and when you get to the end, you've got all the detail. But when that's presented to officers, it can be a bit members, it can be a bit overwhelming at times. So I think we've done a lot of good things this year in terms of opportunities for members to engage over detail, whether it's in workshops or the working groups, etc. But I think it'd be right for me to reflect back the views of some of the members on scrutiny, that we could always look to improve that, so it's easier for members to assimilate and to engage positively over the information being presented. So that applies across all the areas, but I thought I'd just deal with that now and clear it out of the way. In terms of the corporate strategy, I mean, obviously the comments from scrutiny are set down there for you, and I don't want to laboriously go through each one in turn. A lot of them reflect questions being asked for clarification at the meeting, but I'd just like to pick on one or two just to highlight. It probably would be no surprise that there's nervousness amongst members of scrutiny. I think probably members wider base on the council about the state of play with their MMDR, and that's set out in the comments. But I think equally there was a recognition that that is the position of the council, and that's the position set out in the local plan, and all our efforts must be directed to actually making that a reality. But at the same time, it's right to be aware of the possible alternative scenarios that could unfold. So there was a little concern raised over that. There was also some discussion about how the principles set out in the strategic plan would be measured, how the deliverables would actually be measured during the course of its life, both in terms of the immediate plan and the longer 10-year vision. And I think there was some positive reassurance given about that. But again, I think it would be helpful, maybe it's scrutiny to revisit over time the progress made on the corporate plan. I know Cabinet will be doing that and will be receiving its quarterly reports in any case. Just on the question of consultation, although I think the number of responses, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head now, it's something like 97 responses to the consultation, which probably and sadly is quite a high level of engagement from the public in terms of the consultations we carry out. But it was carried out over Christmas and New Year, and it was just felt that we should be looking at when we launch these processes sometimes, because it might be less conducive at certain times to getting public engagement. But again, I think there is some additional resource allocated in the budget, which is welcome, and the principle of constantly looking at how we can improve public engagement is set out there. But on the issue of engagement, the next point that I want to highlight is there was something in the report about a review of polling stations, and it actually said in the report the possibility of reducing the number of polling stations, and that set a little red light in some people's minds, because at the moment we know there's a low level of participation in local elections, and there was a fear expressed that fewer polling stations might not be the best way to improve that. But I think we were satisfied with the assurance given at that meeting that this is part of the statutory review. And I think the reference in the strategy is going to be tweaked a little bit anyway, so it reflects the fact there's a recognition that whilst we don't want to have more polling stations than we need for economic reasons, they are an important part of the process of encouraging people to take part in our local democratic elections. Again, there was a query raised about the assignment of the term protected characteristic to young people discharged from care. I think it was very helpful. We got a fuller explanation of exactly what that meant at the meeting. And I think it actually acknowledges that this is an important group whose particular issues need to be in the forefront of how we engage with them as a council. So that was certainly welcomed. And then finally, and I have to say this is a point I raised at the meeting. I think it's very important that we set out a vision on around the improvement of transport links, but we don't want to get caught in the trap of the public thinking that we are responsible for any of those transport links that currently exist, or we hope will be improved in the future. Other than our partnership with Rutland under the Levelling Up Fund in that particular project. So really, what this point is saying is that we need to ensure that whilst we will lobby and work with all partners to look to improve transport links, we need the public perception to be very clear that it's not something we can directly conjure up solutions to. It's something we lobby on. It was just about a question of how we contextualise our role in that. That was all. So thank you, Chair. That's the only points that I wanted to highlight.
Thank you very much, Mike. And thank you to the scrutiny team. I'll just respond on two of the points you made about the quantity of the documentation, particularly difficult this year, of course, because we're setting off on a new corporate strategy. So it's particularly bundlesome, and that sort of links in with the point about measurements. So that in the next few years, it'll be more about measurements of the existing plan rather than constructing a new one. So hopefully that will bed down a bit. Anybody want to make any comments or questions? Yes, Pat.
Just a very, very quick one. A comment talking about the quantity of paper. I think the officers need thanking and commending for their accuracy and what they have produced. It's very useful. And as I say, from what I can see, absolutely accurate. Thank you.
Well, Pat, if you say it's absolutely accurate, I'm sure it is. I think we're probably done with that. I think we could probably move on. Should we go on to item 7? Sorry.
Just need to move the recommendation to no. But not actually move.
I do beg your pardon, Chief Executive. I omitted to obey my own instructions. I shall move the to note and thank scrutiny.
No, sorry, it's a recommendation on item 6. Sorry.
The previous item.
No, sorry, no, on item 5, sorry. Move on the corporate strategy was not actually moved and seconded by recommendation.
Page 22. Yes, I move the recommendations on page 22 of our agenda that Cabinet recommend that Council at 2.1 and 2.2 approves and approves.
That third one.
And I have to add a third one,
Yeah.
which I will now read out to you. This is, I'll read it out and then I'll ask the Chief Executive to explain the wording. Delegates, we approve delegation of authority to the Chief Executive in consultation with the leader to update the corporate delivery plan with any amendments required following the budget reports and to make any other minor operational amendments as required. So that's if once we've done the budget, there might be some amendments. So do you want to add anything?
Yeah, simply that, leader, just acknowledging the budget council is tomorrow that will consider this and the budget. Obviously, until the budget is formalised and finalised, the corporate strategy can't be finalised either. So it's just to give us the flexibility and the authority to make any minor amendments that may arise from that debate tomorrow. Thank you.
Happy to second if you're looking for a seconder.
Very happy to look for a seconder. Thank you. All those in favour, please show. Any against? No. Good. Thank you. Which will take us down to item 8, which is pages 213 to 25. So 7. I do beg your pardon. They're in a different order up there, aren't they? So it's pages 153 to 212. It's the capital programme 2023 to 2028, General Fund and Capital Strategy 2024 to 2025. So this is over to Sarah and Dawn. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. I thought we were going to, if scrutiny got feedback on this paper. That's okay.
Bring in the chair of scrutiny to make his comments first.
There's a lesson here about not overcomplicating the agenda, isn't there, Chair? Yeah. In actual fact, on the capital programme, there was only one comment that fed back from scrutiny, and that was just around the issue of how the underspends were reflected. And I think, again, the assurance was given at that meeting that we'd learned from that example, and going forward, things would be more effectively dealt with.
Thank you very much. Sarah?
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to propose the recommendations within the report that are found at 2.1 through to 2.226. There's a number of recommendations in there. The projects that are proposed within the capital strategies build on items such as the asset management plan that we've approved earlier and the repairs and renewals programmes. The proposed expenditure on IT recognises the need to keep our IT infrastructure up to date and remain resilient following a review of the infrastructure across Leicestershire within the ICT partnership. The development of this plan has been, again, a series of risk-based choices, and I think our community need to be very clear that we are not achieving everything we would want to achieve, and that we had to make some tough decisions within the choices that we've made, and that part of that has been cross-party in identifying those things that we think are the most risk-based decisions to make and those that our communities want. I think our community is likely to be frustrated at some of the limited opportunities for investment within the budget, but that our administration made it very clear that maintaining our commitment to financial responsibility was our priority, and therefore the options we have picked are based on that principle. The one thing I would like to highlight is that the majority of the programme, if you look within the paper, over 85% of this is being funded by external grants. That demonstrates the skill of our team of officers here in obtaining those grants, but it also reflects the fact that this is a really precarious situation for the council on an ongoing basis. And I, like many councillors across the country, will wish to represent that running our council in this begging bowl fashion doesn't allow us to create stability and continuity for the projects that we aim to run. So I commend the officers, and I would like to recommend the paper because I think they've done a sterling job in getting the grant funding in that enables us to do the projects that are proposed within the strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And I'm happy to second your proposal to move the recommendations at 2.2, but as a courtesy, I must invite Dawn to make any additional comments she feels she'd like to.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. So a core element of this paper is the capital strategy, and that sets out forward capital projections as well beyond the budget year 24-25, and that needs to be considered alongside the budget and all the other associated reports, because it links in to the Treasury Management Strategy and the revenue budget that you've got elsewhere on the agenda. The capital strategy covers all of the council's funds, but the specific capital programme proposals for the housing revenue account are contained in that separate paper relating to the HRA. The report also sets out the source of funding for each item as well. Thank you.
In that case, it's been moved and seconded. I'll call for a vote. All those in favour, please show. None against. Thank you very much. So that is now item 7 out the way, and we move on to item 8, pages 213 to 258. And I shall get this right this time. I shall invite the Chairman of Scrutiny to make any comments relevant to this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I just want to, the first point to make, I wasn't going to highlight it. I should do really, but just picking up on Councillor Cumber's comment earlier, our bullet point 5 under this item just says thanks to the officers, and I think there was a recognition at the meeting the tremendous amount of work and the quality of what was presented to us. So I'd just like to maybe emphasise that. Just in terms of issues to highlight, again, I'm not going to go through every item that's listed here. There was, a little bit of concern, quite a lot of concern really about the situation at Phoenix House, but we did get a very full explanation. This is regarding the allocation of service charges over time, and I think one of the things sometimes it's quite hard to do. You go to all the different meetings and the different discussions, but in a sense, this is about joining the dots. So what was being referred to by Councillor Cox regarding the asset management plan feeds into this sort of issue. And it's actually picking up on that, and something that's not actually been picked up in our feedback here, but in a similar vein, in the same way, discussions in one area about problems in environment services are reflected in the growth item in the budget, and the same to some degree with housing as well. So I think it requires a bit of patience at times to actually get all those dots to join together, but they do. And I think that was a very positive thing that came out of the budget that was presented to us. There was, and I make no apology for this, although I fully accepted the answer that was given at the meeting, but I think we will always want to come back and ask about how many consultants are we employing, and whether we're getting value for money out of that. You know, it's an ongoing concern. It does, of course, reflect some of the problems of scale in local government in the area in which we're now living, but perhaps links into one of the other issues, which I believe is going to come up at tomorrow night's meeting, about you know, looking at every opportunity around sharing services, so that expertise can be in-house more easily than having to go outside. And I think the only other actually, I don't think there's another issue to highlight that's not self-explanatory here. I mean, given that the budget is one of the most important things of the year, and given the amount of detail, we don't seem to have found an awful lot to feed back in any sort of querying or critical way. I think that's a good thing. And I think we did spend a reasonable amount of time on it, you know, looked into some of the nooks and crannies, but on the whole feel that we've been presented with a balanced and appropriate proposal to go to the council tomorrow night.
Thanks. Thank you, Mike. Can I just ask you, on your last comment, was that a pretty unanimous feeling of the committee?
I think it would be the view of those who chose to express an opinion. That might, yeah.
Right, Sarah.
Thank you. It's the Sarah show today, isn't it? I do apologise. So in relation to this paper, I'm happy to propose the recommendations that are from 2.1 through to 2.29. Just in relation to 2.21, we now have the final settlement additional figure that came through, which was an additional 34,000. So that will be subject to decisions tomorrow. Forecasts and things will be adjusted in relation to that amount. Donald, correct me if I'm wrong on that one. That's my note. So unlike many councils, Melton Mowbray is not in a position to declare bankruptcy, and I think we're very fortunate that we have officers and that the team have worked really hard to present us with as close to a balanced budget as we can achieve. The financial position for the long term, though, remains challenging. There is clearly a determination from central government that councils will use up their reserves, and that is a large risk for us, and that's been highlighted within a number of the reports. I think when we come on to Treasury Management around the risk, around the level of reserves for this council. And our finances remain the largest strategic risk to the council in the long term on our risk register. I'm grateful to the work the officers have done to ensure that this year's forecast not only is balanced, but is as accurate as it can be. And I know a lot of work went into making sure that we had those accurate figures fed into the Director of Finance so that we could really tie down this budget. If this can be achieved at year end, it will leave us in a better position in terms of the level of our reserves to address the ongoing challenges we face. Again, the finance settlement falls short of what councils need to deliver the services to the public, and I think our community will be frustrated at that position. The budget proposals have taken into account the views expressed by the Scrutiny Committee, so we thank them for their feedback. The growth in the proposed budget enables investment in areas where we know there are challenges and investment is needed, such as planning, town centre and environmental health. These are all issues our communities have contacted us about most. Utilising the reserves to balance the budget is not ideal, and with the future forecast highlights the importance of a robust and deliverable financial sustainability programme. It is vital to the Council's future financial health that this is a realistic and achievable plan. In this context, it's important we maintain our momentum on the asset development programme, and this will be key to maximising the assets and achieving value for money, with potential for generating much needed revenue and capital resources. However, we need to recognise that this is not a short-term programme, and in the meantime, we will need to continue to look elsewhere for savings, which we've already started doing within our own portfolios. The proposed budget, in respect of special expenses, significantly reduces the previous budget gap and is a big step forward to achieving an ongoing balanced budget for this fund. I'm happy to support these proposals.
Thanks, Sarah, and I'm happy to second them and to reiterate the thanks of everybody and ask Dawn to make any comments she wishes to.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Just in terms of the estimated year-end position, I think that provides an important backdrop to the story and the history and where we've got to where we have. There have been a challenge, as Councillor Cox has said, inflationary pressures and reduced income from planning fees and pressures in building control and environmental maintenance and leisure. These have been mitigated by increased investment income, which we know will start to decline, and also non-recurring grant income. And a number of these inflationary and income pressures will continue into 24-25. The forecast shown for the general expenses, as Councillor said, is now for a largely balanced position, although that will remain a challenge over the last 2 months of the year. In terms of the finance settlement, the additional 34,000 referred to from extra primarily rural services delivery grant will reduce the proposed budget deficit for 24-25 to just over £46,000. And the main gain for the council from the finance settlement was the new homes bonus, which, with the increased housing growth in the boroughs, boosted income in that area, although that did result in a loss of the funding guarantee. And the referendum limit remained at £5 or 3%, with the 2.99% proposed overall. Moving on to next year's budget, as we've said, the budget aligns with the new corporate strategy, so the two are interlinked. There's a number of growth proposals, and they consist of both recurring and non-recurring expenditure. And you can see that, as I said, that the in table 4.451, they result in a deficit of £81,000 in that table, but that reduces down to 46 with the additional final finance settlement. And that's after using reserves to fund non-recurring items of 248k and also 13k from special expenses. A number of assumptions have been made, and they're all set out in the report, along with the associated risks and the mitigating actions that are being taken, and no contingency. We've been unable to provide a contingency in the budget because of the pressures that we've got elsewhere. So that does bring its own risk with that. The key risks relate to inflation, income assumptions, and also the revenue impact of the new waste requirements that might not be met by grant funding. Until we have that, we just won't know. Forecasts for future years are also contained in the report, and they're drawn down against a backdrop of great uncertainty regarding inflation and future funding levels. So there's also sensitivity analysis included in the report as well. With the budget proposals being dependent on the use of reserves, it's not sustainable, as the councillor has said, and therefore the council will need to continue to develop its sustainability plan. The position on the reserves is also set out in the report, with the key ones highlighted in paragraph 491. And it can be seen here that the key unallocated reserve, being the corporate priorities reserve and the special expenses reserve, are projected in the report to be 969 and 79 respectively. That 969 balance on the corporate priorities reserve increases to just over £1 million with that extra 34,000 from the final settlement. Finally, I am required to comment on the robustness of the estimates and the adequacy of the reserves, and on the basis of the information available to me and at the present time, the information provided by budget holders and subject to the risks set out in section 15, I'm satisfied with these. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a great relief to all of us, that last sentence. Any questions or? Yes, Margaret.
Just quickly, yes, we've all worked really hard on this, and I'd just like to thank officers and obviously Sarah sort of leading it as well. I think it's absolutely fabulous that we've got to this point where we can invest, and despite we were really worried about what the state of play when we all came into this administration, but we can invest, and I think that's absolutely fabulous. But we have listened to people as well to say we need more investment in planning, we need more investment in planning enforcement, more investment in the environmental maintenance, which are all part of my sort of portfolio. And yes, I'm really pleased to see that we are actually doing that. So well done everybody that's been involved. Thank you.
Okay, well, the recommendations on page 215 have been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please show. Any against? No. So we now move on to item 9, and I'll invite Chairman of Scrutiny to make his last contribution of the afternoon.
Thank you. I could talk long enough to take it into the evening if you'd like, Chair, but probably not. Probably the largest item in our consideration at this meeting was around the issue of arrears. I'm aware that before I not only joined Scrutiny, but indeed before I was on the council, that had previously been an issue of some concern within the Scrutiny Committee, and it was raised again at this meeting, but in the context of the fact that the arrears situation is improving, and that was very much welcomed. There was some concern about the costs of the resources having to be deployed to achieve that. But I think that, after some clarification and some discussion, it was recognised that you can't crack this issue without having appropriate resources devoted to it. And we've seen a huge improvement. And there is a guarantee, or I took it as a guarantee, that the matter will remain under review, because of course it's one of those things. It's a bit like the rolling waves at sea, isn't it? You get it down to a certain level and think you no longer got an issue, and it will rise again if you're not on it. But I was very impressed with the strategy that's been set out, not just at this meeting, but at previous ones. And I think we can be confident that going forward, it will continue to be an improving situation. The one issue, and it comes up in a later point, that gave rise to some concerns about where we might be this year is, of course, with the rent increase that quite rightly is being applied. There's no dispute that rent increase is appropriate. But of course, while some economic signs are showing a little bit of improvement, for many of our tenants, that will be something they'll struggle to manage. And again, it was clear from the responses we received at the meeting that that's recognised, and appropriate resources and support will be deployed. And I'm sure, particularly in those cases where people have previously had or have ongoing problems with their payment of rent, to ensure that they don't fall into a deeper problem as a result. So we had a reasonable discussion about it, and I think there's some confidence that we have hugely improved where we were in the past and will continue to improve. Likewise, I just want to highlight, I mean, I think the turnaround on how void properties are dealt with is staggering. In actual fact, I mean, I think the previous, not so long ago, the period of time was something around 70 days. We're now down to 16.9, I think was the figure I stuck in my head. It's certainly a huge reduction in the time that properties are left void. And I think, again, that shows the journey we've been on in this authority in terms of our housing service to correct some of the the issues that have bedeviled it in the past, and that's to be welcomed and congratulated. Other than that, I think the other issue that was noted, but again is a mark of where improvements have been secured, is that we actually are getting towards the peak of replacing kitchens and bathrooms, and I think we read that as meaning we've caught up with the programme of replacing kitchens and bathrooms, or will do in 2025-26, and again that was very much welcomed by the committee. And then finally, but I think this is something that alarmed one or two members, but we were reassured over on hearing actual figures. There's the issue of fires and in council properties, and we were satisfied that's nothing to do with structural defects or other deficiencies in the way the properties are maintained. And of course, there will be a continuing approach which ensures that we keep tenants informed of the safe and the unsafe ways to manage how they use those properties. Again, there are some other points here, Chair, but I think those are the main ones just to highlight.
Thanks, Mike. Thank your colleagues for that report. As the portfolio holder for housing, I wish I could say it was all down to me, but of course it isn't. It's down to the great work that's been done by the staff in the area of arrears and voids, and it's really good to see. Now, I'm going to invite Sarah Dawn and Michelle, as appropriate, to say anything you wish on this item.
I'm happy to support the proposals set out in this report. I think the current year shows the challenges that HRA has had in relation to the inflationary pressures. The investment income this year, and we'll mention that again when we come on to Treasury Management, has helped to mitigate this over this last financial year. The government policy provides clear guidance on the level of rent increase and proposals, and they are all in line with this policy. I recognise this adds pressure to the tenants, but it is mitigated by the availability of certain benefits for those that are eligible. I think it's also worthy noting that over the last few months, we've had many discussions about early intervention with tenants who fall into arrears, and that intervention is about supporting them so that those arrears don't accrue, and that will feed into, you know, when we look at the write-off paper later, that we're trying to get in early and support them and get them to understand the financial position they're in and support them with that. And I'm happy to hand over to Michelle.
Yeah, thank you. Just to comment that the proposals are in line with the HRA business plan and your approved asset management plan. And once again, I can confirm I'm satisfied with the robustness of the estimates based on the information available to me, the adequacy of the reserves and the balances as set out in the HRA business plan. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to offer some things from a service perspective. So just want to also comment on the rent increase and the reason that that is necessary. So rent and tenants' rent is used to invest in council homes and services and making them as good as they can be and making sure that they are decent and safe and that we continue to provide good services. So it's a really important area, but we do understand that the pressure that can put on households. One of the things that we've been doing to support tenants is looking at how we can help with financial resilience within households. And there are a number of ways in which we do that, really looking at what's needed on a case-by-case basis. But recently the council has subscribed to a system that will allow people to access things like retail discounts that can help them in the moment with some of those household costs. Again, just one of the ways in which we can support people, and that remains a focus for Ali and the team. The other point, just in terms of rent arrears, so we are seeing that increased resource making a difference. There will always be blips and there will always be some peaks that we need to work through, but we are seeing that make an improvement. One of the challenges that we will make sure that we focus on over the next few months is the exit plan, which is something we discuss with scrutiny because we can't sustain that level of resource. And so having stabilised that, we will move into a period of business as usual, but we keep that under review. And we're actively monitoring that both as a senior leadership team and with Cabinet, which is really helpful to all of us. So thank you for that. One of the areas within the paper refers to the intensive housing management service and the review that has been underway. That review is continuing at the moment, and scrutiny will consider some proposals around that before Cabinet consider those over the next few weeks. But again, a really important area of focus for us. One of the things I wanted to really reflect on was a real strength that we're seeing now around the housing assets and the way in which we invest in those assets, and the real importance of having an asset management programme. The Chair of Scrutiny earlier referred to the resilience that we will get through having that with our general fund assets, and we've really seen the benefit within the housing revenue account. So being able to say confidently that we can spend that capital programme when we're investing in tenants' homes in the way that we should is a really proud place to be, and is a real marker of an improvement on the journey that the council has been on. We have just refreshed the asset management plan, so Cabinet considered that last month, and that's a really important way of us keeping up to date and keeping that programme up to date. So Chair of Scrutiny referred to the peak of those kitchen improvements, and that is because we know that they are coming to the end of their life and feed into that programme, and you will see through the life of the business plan peaks at certain points as those things come to the end of their natural life or condition need improving. So it's always something we keep under review, and it will continue to peak, but we've got a really good handle on that plan for investing in homes now. I just wanted to reflect also before I finish on this year being a really key one in terms of regulatory change. We've talked about it for a really long time, and it's coming, and so that'll be here very shortly, and that will place even greater focus and scrutiny on the housing sector as a whole. We still carry risks as a council and as a landlord, and we are working through those, and we're being open and transparent about those, but we've got a really clear and confident plan in how we will continue to overcome them. And one of the key things that I think stands us in really good stead is the work that we've already done to invest in homes, and make sure that we are planning our investments, and the surveys that we committed to do every year, and you will see the outcome of those reflected through the budget setting process. They are underway again this year, and they'll continue each year thereafter. So that should give us confidence in the budgets around how we invest in homes for the future. That's all from me. Thank you.
Did you move those recommendations? And I'll
Yes, happy to propose those recommendations.
I'll second them. Any comments or questions from other members? Okay, we'll move to a vote then. All those in favour, please show. Any against? No, that's carried. You're very welcome to stay, Mike. As we move on to item 10, Treasury Management Strategy and Prudential Indicators 2024 to 25. So it was Sarah and Pranali, I think. Oh, sorry.
It's money.
It's my P's and D's. I can't.
Okay.
Don't know my P's from my D's.
Well, Treasury management is a real strong point for this council. I'd just like to remind Cabinet of the position that we've been in relation to top of the group across the comparative councils in relation to our investment portfolio over the last year. Undoubtedly, the investments that have been made and the income that's been generated over the last financial year has helped this council face the challenges of inflation that it's faced in other areas. I'm happy to propose the recommendations that are shown in the paper from 2.1 to 2.4. And whilst it is a technical paper, the various indicators and supportive commentary demonstrate how well the team are managing the council's finances in a prudent and measured way. They show how cash flow is managed to good effect and how well the investments are managed, and borrowing is managed in a challenging environment. As has been referred to in the previous reports, and we've seen constant commentary tonight, rising inflation has been an important factor in the budgeting this year, and the management of the cash flow and managing it well has maximised our returns from investments, and this has mitigated the rising costs that we're facing. Next year is going to be more challenging as interest rates are forecast to reduce, and therefore I support the strategy as the team are looking to secure and lock in as much of our investments as they can while rates are high to generate the greatest return possible. All of these returns are low risk, and I'd like to compliment the team on the investment portfolio and the Treasury strategy going forward. Thank you.
I will formally second it. Does anybody have any questions or comments to make? Dawn has decided to not comment. Okay, all those in favour, please show. Any against? None against. We move on to item 11. Before we do so, I'll point out that appendices 1 to 4 are exempt. So do not refer to them unless we move into an exempt session. We can, of course, do that if you so wish. So, Sarah, I'll hand over to you again. And a glass of water.
Yeah, that's one for tonight, I think. I'm happy to support the recommendation within this paper. Write-offs are very challenging for all of us, and there has been exceptional scrutiny of the write-offs we're authorising this evening. I know it's a very difficult decision for us to make, but some debts are just not economical or possible to collect. And in these cases, we need to take the necessary steps to write off these debts. We then can have accurate understanding of what our collectible debt levels are and can focus our resources effectively. Scrutiny have previously undertaken a review of this area and recognised the need to keep on top of writing off debts. I personally would like to thank the housing team, because there's been that early intervention focus with a view to us preventing the accrual of debts long term. And that work is started. We're starting to see the rewards of that work now. So thank you.
Refer to the appendices? No. Okay. Well, I will second your recommendations. Does anybody have any questions or comments to make? In that case, we're going to move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Any against? No. So I declare that item finished. And unless the Chief Executive reminds me of something I've forgotten, I declare the meeting closed under the hour. Thank you all very much. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, scrutiny.